Hey, good afternoon, wood butchers. I think it's time to see if we can keep this anti-static hose from the DeWalt vacuum cleaners from marking stuff. I've read online and I've tested this out that these things, as you drag them around, can lead to marks or black spots on different types of materials. The other thing that drives me nuts with any hose with this kind of ribbing on it is that it will get stuck on things. It'll get caught, especially if there's a sharp edge or whatever, and it's not a lot of fun. Now, the Festool hoses, great hoses, but they're twice the price of these. They actually, the good ones, the top of the line ones that they have now, have a sleeving on them. I don't really want to pay for, that amount of hose for sleeving. The other thing is that these things have the, DeWalt quick couplers, and it works with their tools. I don't want to have to start, finding adapters and that type of thing. So it's going to work with this. Now, I got out some prime wood that I had hanging around, and I thought, well, let's just see what happens. If I just rub it across, don't know if you can see that, but it does leave some marks, and it kind of rubs off almost like like an eraser type of thing. So that, if it's dragging across maybe some millwork or whatever that you have, if the paint is right, it's going to rub off. Here's some factory primed casing. I got at the Home Depot. Used it in the previous house, and for our stuff, it was left over. Look at that. Now that's not good. I know I would be pretty upset if I had some casing or millwork or painted surfaces that had that. I don't know if it's showing up as well, but it's pretty evident when you look at it with the naked eye from, even 3 feet away, 4 feet away. So let's go through how to sleeve these hoses to, number one, prevent them from catching on stuff. Number two is to keep them from leaving marks. All you're going to need is a couple items. I'll leave links in the description from Amazon. So these are all the supplies you're going to need to sleeve your hose. This is all completed. You're going to see how this is done, but this is what I used when doing this. Initially, there were some challenges because I thought I could get away without any zip ties, but didn't work. So number one, you need a good heat gun. I like this particular one. It's the D26960 heat gun. Couple features on it. It has a digital gauge. You can adjust the temperature up and down, and you have 2 settings, a low and a high. But the thing I like about it, I can put it down and then do my work over top of it. Number two, you're going to need some electrical tape for holding down the sleeving. Obviously, you're going to need some sleeving here. I'm using 1.5 inches. I think the better one is about 1.25 inches. I think it would sit a little tighter on the hose. And if you can find it, somewhere out there I've seen them where it's a black and yellow safety stripe, which I think would look pretty sweet with a black and yellow vacuum. Don't have it, not getting it, but maybe that would be something in the future. I have some 50 millimeter heat shrink tubing. You're going to need about a 2-inch and a 2.5-inch piece. Just cut them with regular scissors. If you need to cut your sleeving, you're going to want to be very careful. Hold it tight. Cut it with a scissors or a knife. I like the scissors. And then what you're going to do is afterwards use the little heat gun. And you're going to very carefully, watch your hands, don't burn yourself, singe all of the loose fibers of that sleeving so they don't just splay apart. If you have a hot knife, use that. It's great. Next, you're going to need some 4-inch cable ties. I opted for the 4-inch and put the 2 ends together and made one loop because the little catches on the end are smaller. You could use, I think, 6-inch might work, but it might be a little tight. For sure, 8-inch is going to work, but these little end parts are going to be super big and they're going to stick up, and you're going to see how these little guys sit down quite nicely. You need a pair of pliers to pull those zip ties tight. Also, get the good zip ties. Don't go cheap. These are from Princess Auto. They're not horribly expensive, but they're pretty darn strong, and I've been pretty impressed with them. They have about a tensile strength of 18 pounds. Works good for me. Last thing is, if you have them, get the flush cutters. These things cut zip tie ends perfectly flush, and you don't end up with that sharp little thing you're gonna cut yourself on, and it lays flatter when you put the heat shrink tubing on. So if you can find these, I'm gonna try and find a link to the monoprice ones. These are the ones I got. Knipex makes a nice set. These were $6 or whatever for monoprice. Otherwise, let's get to it and sleeve that cable. Rex is kind of really liking it outside. He kind of enjoys snooping around and watching all the traffic go by and animals, and the giant jackrabbits are about his size. Anyways, let's get back to the sleeving. Oh, wait, what's there? Probably a puppy of some sort. And question is, what is that white stuff still on the ground? It keeps going away every day. I'm getting tired of this stuff. We're spring. Alrighty, so we have the sleeve. I'd cut it previously and melted the ends, and we're just going to try and expand that out. And then it's really easy. You just slide it over top. At some point in time, you're gonna get a lot of friction, and you're gonna have to slide, like expand it and slide it. So let me sleeve this whole thing. We're gonna get down to the other end, cut it off, and then start from there. I've sleeved it all the way down to the far end. I figured out where it would attach to, and came up with a small problem. I've already done it once, didn't work the way I'd hoped. What I did find was that the heat shrink held the sleeving on, but I could pull it out fairly easily. It took a bit of force, but I figure if you're tugging on this, if you're vacuuming things, it's not gonna go well. So what I've done is I've taken 2 small zip ties. I'm gonna cinch them down with pliers, and then I'm going to use these fine snippers. You can see how they cut right sort of flush here. Knipex makes them. These are the ones from Monoprice. And so I'm gonna cinch these down, give them a good tug, get this really, sort of firm on there. Then I'm gonna put the heat shrink on and redo it, see if that works better. So you're just gonna hold this down, hold on to the end there, just give a little bit of a tug, kind of cinch it fairly snug. We'll do the other one. Hold it down. Cinch it snug. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of sticking up there a little bit. Hopefully when we put the heat shrink on, it's gonna hold that down. Let's cut those flush. There we go, 1, 2. And if you've ever cut zip ties, you know how sharp it can get where you cut them. I can run my finger on that all day long, nice and solid, and that is not coming off. Again, once the heat shrink is on there and it holds that tight down, it's gonna look really good. The little clasps are sitting down in the groove, which is nice. That's gonna be fairly catching on stuff. This is the end that is gonna attach into tools, so we don't want this sticking up a whole lot. So let me cut a new piece of heat shrink, get that on there, and then we'll start shrinking it down. I've cut about 2 inches of the heat shrink. I've threaded it on, and you can see how it's gonna cover over that. And it's actually gonna go underneath the flange of this thing. So it's not gonna get caught on stuff, which I think is important. So once I thread this on, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna go underneath the collar there. So that's gonna keep stuff from jamming in that way. So let's make sure we get it centered just about right. Turn the heater on, and let's try and cinch this down. And let's see how it does on those strands that are sticking up there. Just kind of go around the edge. Come at it from all sides. There we go. Okay, we're gonna leave that for now. And you can see how it's kind of shrunk down. All those little loose ends are all nicely tucked in there. All you have are these two little bumps, and it's certainly narrower than that, so I don't think it's going to interfere at all. So now that that's held, we're going to let that cool off. So this polyolefin tubing, shrink tubing, kind of hardens up a little bit. All right, now it's very pliable, so we don't want to start pulling on it when it's all stretchy. So I'm going to give this a few minutes, and then we're going to come back and we're going to stretch all of this braiding out and secure it at the other end. One other thing that was interesting, I got a 25-foot roll of this braiding, and that 25-foot roll, I'm not sure if it's going to do all of this. That's a 15-foot hose. The other hose that I did is about 5.5, 6 feet long. So to me, and this is 1.5 inch tubing, and I'm actually stretching it out, trying to shrink it down a little bit. So I'm not sure it was an entirely 25 feet on that roll, but it's doing what I need it to do. Give me a few minutes here. This is all nice and cool now, and kind of stiffening up a little bit. So the whole process is, trying to get this a little bit snugger, is you're going to push it up. See how it bulges up there? And then stretch that out. Push that up and stretch that out. That's just going to tighten the sleeving here a little bit. It's still going to give it lots of flex and lots of ability to move without making the hose any stiffer. But again, it keeps that sleeving a little more firm on there. 1.25 inch, best way to go with this. I had 1.5 inch, but 1.25 inch. If you can find it at a reasonable cost, better. 1.5 inch will work. Let me finish this up, and then I'll show you at the other end how it's looking. All right, so I've done the slinky thing all the way down, and you can see how much extra has been bunched up here. What I like to do is get a piece of electrical tape and fold the end over, and then I wrap it around here to keep it from sliding back this way. And I'm gonna do this a few more times. It's probably gonna cover over the anti-static logo there, but I think you're gonna be able to see that through the sleeving. So once I have it all the proper tension, I'll show you where it ends up. That could not have worked out any better. With doing the pushing the sleeving up and kind of tightening it up a little bit, came out to the perfect length. It originally was way back here. So I've been able to stretch that out and kind of conform it. You can still see the anti-static through here. And there's enough sort of give in that sleeving that it's not going to affect the tubing at all. So I'm going to come back a little bit, do my 2 zip ties, crank them tight, and then do my heat shrink over top of that. Put the end on, and I'm going to show you the final, how this all works and what it looks like. And we're going to do a test on that board that we did before and see if it leaves any marks with this stuff. So we have our zip ties in place. Let's give them a good tightening down. Make sure that both of them are seated in properly. Pull this over. Little tug, couple zips on each one. Good. Okay, so again, we get our flush cut cutters, snip these off. Fantastic. Now to cut some heat shrink. I'm going to cut it a little bit long so it covers over this way, probably 2.5 inches, just so it makes a nice end up on this one where it's going to be pulling. You're going to be pulling on this from the nozzle end as you're pulling your vac along. So I want to make sure this part is nice and solid. That turned out really good. So you can see how I have a nice wide heat shrink on there. You can see that, hopefully you can see it. It's got the texture of the sleeving sort of embedded into it. Comes up fairly nice and high. This is the end with that will attach into tools and that type of thing. You can screw it on. And you can see how it goes over top of that a little bit. There we go. Seats in absolutely perfectly. There we go. Wiggles around. This will not move. The other thing, as I shrunk or pulled the sleeving down, you can see here, I don't know if you can see, how it lost a little bit of tension. So I'm going to hit that again with the heat gun. Put all the ends back on, and then show you the final product. Fantastic, all done. So here's that piece of wood that we had the marks on before. And let's take our hose. Little bit of scuffing, but way less than that was. More importantly, it slides over the edge beautifully. So it's not going to get caught. It's not going to tear that up. That, I think, is a much better finish. This, I think, would paint over quite nicely. And I think it's more of just buffing out the primer on that side. Not as nearly as bad. Not as good as I had hoped, but pretty good. And I think if you got like a white or a clear, maybe that would be better. I don't know, possibly. But this should be strong, durable, not catch on anything, and more importantly, not leave the black marks that the other thing, or the bear hose, had ever shown. So I hope this helps a little bit. I think it's a worthy upgrade. You know, it hasn't really changed the flexibility of the hose. It's still not as nice as some of the other ones, but it works good. Doesn't seem to pick up dust. On my experiments with the regular shop vac hose, oddly enough, I didn't seem to get as much static on the one that had been sleeved than the one that wasn't sleeved. I don't know if that's a difference or not, but I'm hoping that this isn't going to affect the anti-static component of this hose. If it does, well, then we got an issue. But I'm going to test this out for a little bit. I got some drywall sanding to deal with. I'm sure we're going to get some static from all that dust. Have a great evening, everybody. And I'm going to learn how to speak English again. Get out there, make a mess, clean it up with your new sleeved hose. Have some fun.